So I have a better understanding of things when they're kind of like laid out, like bullet points. And our next guest is going to share with us the 12 spiritual laws, and they are really great. So let's check them out.
Building spirituality, family, health, and business. This is the Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.
Well, welcome, Giant Builders. It is such a beautiful day and a little chilly, but that's okay. And we are here today with Stacey Paige. Hi, Stacey. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a spiritual life coach and a yoga instructor. I work with people, I work with a lot of people who are either going through major changes in their life, like a divorce, the death of a loved one, empty nest syndrome, those type of things, or people who everything appears okay, but they just have that sense that they are missing something inside. So those are primarily the people that I work with. We do an inside out approach, meaning that right now we have within everything that we need to live the most fulfilling life, to be fully in our power. We just have to tap into it and do that inner work to then reflect our outer world. And so that's my belief that we are powerful beyond measure, and it's up to us really to design the lives that we want to live.
So often, though, we get blocked by either what people tell us our life should be or what we feel like our past is leading us. So it's really a tough one.
100%. We are, and that's actually a huge one that I talk about, learning the difference between what we truly want, which is our inner work and tapping into our heart and our spirit and our soul, and what society has taught us to believe that we want that will make us happy. And there's a very, very, very big difference. We can get something that we think that we want, and then we're not feeling the way that we thought we would, which is also a great starting point as well, when we're looking to expand into something greater.
Hmm. I saw in your notes you have the 12 spiritual laws. Does that really build into going the direction that you want to help people get to?
Yeah, so the spiritual laws, they really are, they are always at play, right? They are always influencing our lives, whether we realize it or not. So I always compare it to the law of gravity. So whether or not you believe in the law of gravity, whether or not you think it's true, it is always influencing your life. But if you look at people, so for example, the people who decided that they were going to put an airplane into flight, they understood the law of gravity, they understood some of the other laws of physics, and they worked with the laws to create the result they wanted to. So it is the same thing with the spiritual laws. They can either, be taking you, I always call it like a metaphysical tumbleweed. You're just kind of being blown around because these laws are at play, but you're not understanding how to work with them, or you understand how to work with them, take responsibility, and now you can shape your life the way that you want to and bring in what you want to experience.
Oh, yeah. When you said the law of gravity, I really didn't think about the fact that how people, when they were trained to figure out how to fly, that they were really analyzing all of that. That really didn't hit my head until you just said that.
Yeah, and it's just, that's something that we see and that we know and that we all now believe. So it's just a really good way to put into your head that even those things that you can't see or believe to be true yet are at play. And I always say that with people as well. Don't take my word for it or don't take anybody else's word for it, but work with the laws, work with the suggestions, work with the tools to create your own experiences. So that really, and that really is the key to true empowerment, right? It's not believing what somebody else says to be true and just taking it at their word. But if something in you resonates, there's a reason. Your higher self recognizes truth, so there's a reason. But then incorporate the principles, incorporate the practices in the work so that you see the results. So now you know it becomes your wisdom. And instead of knowing about these things, you now know them to be true. And that's what makes you absolutely unshakable and confident and in your power.
Hmm. All right. Well, can we review some of these laws?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first law, which is also called the Great Law, it's the law of cause and effect, right? So, what you sow, you shall reap, which is essentially saying that whatever energy you put out into the world is going to come back to you. So, the way that it really draws into our personal experiences, it's our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions. That is what we're planting in the world. And it really does begin with our thoughts and our beliefs. We're in full control of what we think and what we believe. Oftentimes, our thoughts and our beliefs are, when we're not aware of them, we can just let them run. When we're not, they're going to be dictating our lives. But unless or until we take a look at them, it's going to be in our subconscious. And so I love to talk a little bit about beliefs here. Most of our beliefs are in place by the time that we are 6 years old. Before we have the ability to discern through truth, we are taking in the thoughts, the words, the actions, the emotions of everyone around us and believing them to be true. So we get beliefs, most of us take on beliefs. There's an array of them, but they typically boil down to worthiness and feeling a lack of worthiness. So for as long as that is going on in our subconscious, that is cause, right? Our subconscious beliefs are cause, and then the effect of those is going to be in our life. So when we want to make a change, we have to look back and there's of course practices and ways to actually do this. I can say it now, we got to go through actually doing it. Um, but that's what it is. Those beliefs are that is your cause, and the effect is coming out into your life. So that's the first one. That's a big one, and they all sort of overlap and tie in. Excuse me. The second one is, excuse me, the law of creation, which is essentially saying that life doesn't happen; it requires our participation. And really, what I love to talk about this one is that we are co-creators, right? We're co-creators of our reality with the universe. We do our part, the universe meets us where we are, and we're in co-creation. So, understanding these laws as we go through them is how we participate actively in our co-creation process, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, I could go on forever about these, so I'll touch on them and then we can go back if there's anything that stands out. Otherwise, I we could have 12 of these podcasts. Um, third one, the law of humility. You can't change what you refuse to accept. So, in order to transform your life, you have to acknowledge where you are and take responsibility for it without blame or denial. So, one of the things that I hear a lot of is we like to come up with stories, right? And that's not to say that they're not true. That's not to say that in our upbringing, our parents or our caretakers or our siblings or kids in the neighborhood didn't treat us a certain way, and that didn't result in us kind of being in this situation right now. Um, but at a certain point, as we become adults, we have got to start taking responsibility for where we're at. And that is, it's humbling to take responsibility. But it's being honest with ourselves. It's being willing to see where we're not showing up, where we're showing up in our story, where we are looking for somebody else to come in and to save us. So that's really the law of humility. And then the fourth law is the law of growth, which essentially says wherever you go, there you are. And this is, of course, what I was talking about in the beginning in the way I work, is that true growth begins within. And it's really important to remember that we can't control anyone else, right? We can only control ourselves. And we do have full control over our thoughts, our words, our actions, our beliefs. Um, and I think that there's so many places that I can go with this, but I would say that it really comes down to, so I saw something the other day. This is just a really simple example, but I was there's somebody on Instagram that I follow. I'm big in animal rescue. He's a big animal rescuer. He does these amazing things. And he posted something that was it was a little colorful, I'll call it. It had nothing to do with animal rescue. He's got a huge number of followers. They become his community, they become his people. So in a sense, they're like he looks at them like his friends. So I can't say that I would have posted this. It also was not blatantly offensive. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just a little colorful. And so I was just curious and I went to go to the comments, and most people were like laughing along with him. But this one comment that caught my attention said, "I'm offended by that. Please take it down." And I thought, how interesting is that? Because that to me speaks volumes. Now she has choices, right? She can unfollow him. She can keep scrolling by. She can block him and never see him again, right? Those are our choices to take responsibility for our growth. But instead, she wants to control the outside world so that she's not feeling something that she doesn't want to feel. And so that to me was a huge growth moment, in what's going on with you and just, actually that covers growth, responsibility, and all the other ones. But that is just one story that to me shows a lot of how we want to try to control everything around ourselves instead of doing our inner work. Um, which actually leads us right into the next one. As I said, there's a lot of overlap. The law of responsibility. But the law of responsibility also, in addition to saying that we're the common denominator in our lives, everything that shows up in our life is a mirror of something. So, what I really love about this law is that when we see a pattern, so there are absolutely times when we are going through times of growth and we're taking responsibility for our actions and we're just kind of going through, I call it like the friction of it or the muck of it. But when we know that we still have work to do in something, it's when we see cycles, right? So the law of responsibility shows us, like if I say that I'm not happy in my job, or I'm not happy in my relationship, or with my bank account. And if I change the job, change the person, and I find that I'm in the exact same scenario, just a different job or a different person, but it resembles the same thing, that's showing me that there is something going on underneath. I'm in a pattern. So the law of responsibility saying that you are the common denominator, it's like, okay, let's take a look at that pattern. Let's drill down. What's going on? What are you believing that you're not worthy of? Where are you putting it on somebody else to come in and save you? And again, there's so many things that we can drill down into, but we have to begin to take responsibility for that. And our patterns are great places to show us where we have a little work to do, a belief to look at. We have to, do that change within, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, so then moving into the law of connection. So the law of connection, I look at it a little bit differently than the law of oneness, which we can talk about. But the law of connection, everything is connected, right? Our past, our present, and our future. And I really love this law because I find that it can be, as we grow, right? So the position that I'm sitting in now, it can be very easy for me to look back and say, oh God, I really wish that I had done this or hadn't done that. But if I had taken advantage of that job opportunity, or if I had done this, like, oh God, my life would be so much better right now. I would be so much more full right now. But the truth is that that's not the truth, right? If it was, no matter what you did or didn't do back then, you would be in that position right now. So you stayed in something for longer than at this point you feel you needed to because you still had lessons to get. If you had left that scenario, you would still need to get those lessons. They would just come in the next scenario. But what the law of connection is telling us is that nothing has been wasted. And with that in mind, where you're sitting here right now, knowing now what you know, what do you want it to look like in a month, a year, 5 years? So rather than kind of getting caught up in that cycle of, oh, regret, I wish I'd done things differently, it's like start right here, right now, knowing that you are now paving out in front of you. So our past, our present, and our future is all connected, and there is nothing wasted. Um, Moving us into the law of focus, another one that I love, because we literally can't focus on two things at the same time. So, if we are focusing on negativity, if we are focusing on what we don't have, first of all, we're opening up the door to bring in more of those experiences, but we can't possibly be doing ourselves the good that we want to be doing because we can't be thinking about growth and abundance, focusing on that while we're focusing on lack, limitation, what we don't have. So it's actually really simple. I mean, we very easily get distracted, which leads to all that. But again, it comes down to awareness. Once we are aware of where we're taking our thoughts and our words to, now we can just think, is this really what I want to be bringing in? No. So then we change it. And I know it sounds simple, and I know that all our stuff comes up in that, and I'm very aware of that, and that's where all the work comes in. But it truly is simple, and that is the beginning point, is that change your focus. Change your focus to what you want to be experiencing, and you will be moving your needle more and more towards what you want to experience. And then our next law is the law of giving and hospitality. So this is an interesting one. I'll talk about one part of it in a second, but this is a really interesting one. But the law of giving and hospitality is just saying it's not enough to just talk about it, right? We can't talk about being kind or being nice. We actually have to show up in those acts of kindness. And this is not, and giving of ourselves. And this is where I always want to point out this is not saying that we are giving ourselves to the point of exhaustion. This is not saying that we are giving of ourselves to people who don't respect or appreciate our time, to people who are, as I call them, energy suckers, right? So we're not using this law to say, oh, I guess I've got to show up for everybody and give to everybody when I don't feel like it. We're not saying that at all. But it is being aware when you have some space within you to give. And we know that the more we fill ourselves, the more that we have to give. So this becomes taking responsibility for keeping ourselves filled up, right? Calling in those boundaries when we need, but we keep ourselves filled up and then we'd use that however that looks like, whether you are going to volunteer with animals or people or children, or just be there as a source of support for a friend who's going in. It's having that awareness of being of service in the world. Um, Bringing us into the law of here and now. And again, that goes into everything that we've been talking about. It's being present, right? We can very, very easily get stuck in thinking about the past, the would-haves, the should-haves, the could-haves. We can get stuck in the future. We spend so much time worrying about things that never come into being. Number one, when we worry about the future, we are again setting ourselves up to experience something that we don't want. But when we can be present, when we can stay right here, right now, that is where our power lives. In the present moment, we have the ability to choose a new thought, to choose a new action, to respond to situations versus just reacting to them. So our power 100% lives in the here and now and being present. Moving us into the law of change, which is essentially, I was talking a little bit about that before. History repeats itself until you learn the lesson. So all change begins within, is really what this is saying. So we know that change is going to happen everywhere around us. We know that that is the nature of life. Um, but change, it all begins within. So when we see those cycles, when we see those patterns, we know that we need to look to something, and we know we change inside. And as we change at our core level, as we then our outer world changes. But the one thing I like to bring up here as well is that at our essence, who we truly are as spiritual beings, we are the highest of the high vibration. And we didn't talk a whole lot about energy, but we are at that high vibration. We are aligned with love, prosperity, abundance, peace, joy, all of those things is what we are aligned with at our essence. What happens is life, right? Life comes in. We we have experiences when we're younger that we choose beliefs on. We experience pain, we experience trauma. Anything that we don't process in the moment locks into our body. It brings our vibration down. So, when we talk about this law of change, we are not changing our essence, right? We're not changing that. We're making those shifts in the things that we have taken on that aren't truly us. So, really, what we're doing is we are clearing out what is in the way of our true self being fully empowered in the world. So that's really how I love to look at that law and the law of change is to remember that we are not changing our essence. That is fully in its power, fully in its abundance. All the things that we love are at that core. So it's making those changes to those things that we've brought on that are getting in the way. Which brings us to the law of patience and reward, which I had said to you, this is the one that I'm working on right now. And it talks about the greatest things in life taking time. And there's really a couple of things to this law. Like we've all heard, we have to be patient. And absolutely, there are times where we have to just wait, right? So we are putting something out into the world that we want, and we call it holding the space because a few other things have to happen that aren't related to us. You know, that job needs to become available, the person needs to become available, the position, whatever it is. So there's absolutely time that we are holding space. But generally speaking, what the law of patience and reward is talking about, patience is not passive. Patience is very, very active. So it's a very easy example to look at. Let's say a sports star, whatever, a basketball star, one of those big sports stars. How they got to be how they were, it wasn't through these like big, huge events. It was by showing up in the mundane details every single day, practicing their shots, getting to the gym, whatever it was. It's in the mundane, but they kept showing up, showing up, showing up. So it's the same thing in our inner world, that world of patience. When we are talking about we want to manifest something new, something different, something better, we have to now become the person that can hold that manifestation that we are saying that we want. That means the person who we are right now in this moment has some stuff in the way, some things that need to be processed, some beliefs, whatever it is that's in the way of where you are to what you want to unfold to and experience. So the law of patience is saying that we're showing up every day because everything that's in the way, the beliefs about ourselves, the things that we felt that didn't feel good that we haven't processed yet. And by process, I mean we feel what we felt in the moment. We get any lessons from that experience and then we let it go. Anything we haven't done, that's going to come up. So manifesting sounds wonderful and easy. And it is simple, right? It's science, it's simple, but it is not easy in that all of our stuff is going to come up. So this law of patience and reward is reminding us to just keep showing up every day, even when we think nothing is happening. We are building up. We are expanding ourselves and growing in ourselves to become the person we need to be to have what it is that we say that we want. So that's the big thing of patience. It's not passive. And even when we're holding the space for something to come in, that's still not passive because that's we have to stay in faith. And, so we could have 10 different talks around this, but that's the thing about the patience and reward. It is not passive and it doesn't feel good most of the time because we're out of our comfort zone. And then the last law of these, so I do spiritual laws, and this was overlapping with laws of karma, the law of significance and inspiration, which is that every contribution matters. And this really comes down to the spiritual law of oneness. We are all connected. We're connected with each other. We're connected with nature. Um, Everything has a ripple effect, right? So, and we can see that when we're walking down the street and we could smile at somebody and we see them smile. we could watch somebody. We can watch somebody else smile at somebody else and smile, and we feel it. There's a reason that we feel it. It is because of that law of significance and inspiration or law of oneness. It's the reason why you can be thinking about somebody and they all of a sudden call because we are connected on that level. So that's the law of oneness. And then the law of karma asks us in the law of significance and inspiration to kind of pull in all the other laws, be responsible for what we're putting out, remember that everything matters, and remember that we truly are able to rise together, each person doing just in our own, I don't want to call it a little world, but doing what we can in our lives, in our worlds, working towards what we want to see, working towards growth and positivity. It does help everybody else. So I know those were a lot.
Well, going through in my mind as you're reading these, so is this like something where like you like work on a law at a time, or is it like learning to drive and you have to know all the laws at one time?
So, you know, I would say it's a combination. I wouldn't say it's working on one law at a time, though, as I said, I just did a series where I did one law at a time, and I'm doing a workshop series where we're going through one law at a time. And it's because you're able to extract from that law what's going on in your life. But I wouldn't say that we spend a long time on any one law. It's more just understanding the basics of it, and then we know that they're there. And then as we're for example, like if somebody is working with me, I'm not going to pull out the laws to work with them. I'm going to listen. We're going to see where they're at, and we're going to get them some action steps, get them some practices so that they can move forward. So it's really, I would say at this point for me, as they do all blend in, it's really utilizing aspects of many of them and just moving forward. I'll call it intuitively. Once we know them and we understand them, that wisdom just infiltrates what we're doing. So we don't have to look and say, "Oh, this is the law of that." We can just understand it's something within what needs to be cleared. So I would say that the laws are, when you use something, when you learn about something to help you, to inform you for your growth, like you read the book and you at any different time you'll glean something from what you're learning to put into your life. I would say that's it about these laws. It's not having to study in depth, unless of course if you're called to, it's very fun to, and then you know that you're going to be gleaning from them because growth is it's the layers of the onion, right? So we're never going to, at least not in this lifetime, we're not going to master anything, right? I mean, we can master growth, we can master being willing, but our experience here is that there's always more to grow, there's always more to unfold in our lives, and then being in service to others. So I would say that one day you might go, "Oh God, this is the cause and effect. I did this," and then another law might kind of come in as we're taking responsibility, if that makes sense. So having an understanding of them and then almost just forgetting about them in the sense of letting them be there, but don't get caught up in trying to figure out what law is telling you that this is happening. Instead, be more looking at, okay, what do I need to shift? What do I need to change?
So I guess I see it as in like understanding the laws so you can figure out which laws are you in line with, maybe?
Yeah, I would say if you have an understanding of the laws, then you're really understanding your responsibility, the effect of your thoughts, your words, your beliefs, your actions. And then knowing that, we take the next steps into how do we want to use these, knowing that these are at play in our lives. Now I understand how these are at play in my life. Now what do I want to do with it? So what do I want to create? And so what do I want to plant? What am I putting out into the world? Where am I looking at responsibility? So we can look to them in that way.
Mm,
Um, and again, just sort of embodying what they are to then understand that we are the co-creators. And it still, I would say, goes back to looking at our thoughts, our beliefs, our words, and our actions. And if we're looking at those, we are now aligning ourselves with all of the laws, right? So if we're focused on something that we don't want, we know what we're bringing in, we know the seeds that we're planting. So I would say, and I always say, people listen to their heart and what they're drawn to. If somebody is really drawn to understanding these laws, dig in. If someone goes, "Oh my God, that sounds so overwhelming," it's like, okay, just know that they're at play. Have a basic understanding that these things are at play. And then, take your next step and you sort of know that they're there. And again, that's more of that gleaning, so it's not so overwhelming. And I always say to people as well, I mean, I am a coach. I work with a coach. I work with people. And that's, I think, as well, a big part of it is we're not meant to do this alone. So
mm,
if you're trying to figure out all the laws and how they're applying and what you need to do and where to go, it's very, very, very overwhelming. But if you're working with somebody, especially if the idea of inner, as within, so without, if that resonates with you, you find the person that you want to work with, and then you trust that that person is going to be pulling in what you need and giving it to you or to that person in digestible bites. Digestible meaning to gain the understanding and then to get some practices so that we're now putting it to play, right? Because we can't just sit around and do nothing. There is action is part of it.
mhm.
Um, which I just have to say this story because so there
Okay.
was somebody who I knew. This was years and years and years ago, and she considered herself to be very, very spiritual, and she had lost her job, and so I just kept hearing her chanting and chanting and chanting from her apartment, and I came to find out that she had lost her job, and so she was in her apartment chanting and just chanting and chanting, and she's like with the belief that the job was just going to show up on her door, and I thought back to that a lot later as I started getting more into this work. She didn't pick up any phone. She didn't put in a resume anywhere. She didn't, this was really before the whole online was so predominant, but there still were online resources. None of that happened. And I said, you have to, we absolutely have to align our thoughts and our beliefs, but then we have to take action. And
Mhm.
it's not just the action that we are throwing stuff against the wall to see what fits. We're not forcing things, we're not muscling things. When we're working with spiritual law, we know that we're going to get a nudge. We know that we're going to feel something, an urge to pick up a call, pick up a phone, call someone, take a step. That's inspired action. That's the part of the co-creation with the universe, right? I didn't dive into that in that law, but that's the co-creation is that we are aligning and then the universe is going to sort of put up, but we have to take the action. We have to take inspired action to bring it into being. So cycling all the way back to whatever somebody feels that they are being drawn to, trust that and move with that. And then trust that what you need is going to show up when you're taking the steps that you're being nudged to take.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because, I have had different speakers talk about manifesting and, it's something, some people are like, oh, okay, so I just think it and there it is, but yeah, it requires action too. So it's the big point.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the big thing about that, so I didn't actually fully read the book, The Secret, because I read a little bit and I read enough to see that what the secret was missing, because it was saying just think about it and
Mhm.
it's going to appear. And that is not the truth, in that we have to believe it to be true. So we can begin by thinking something great and wonderful is going to happen. But then we have to feel it. The universe and manifestation resonates with energy. It resonates with feeling. So if you're thinking, I'm going to have this, or, well, first of all, you're putting it out into the future. If you say, I am going to, you are now telling the universe that one day you're going to. So the universe is always going to keep it out into the future. So we always want to be going back to the law of presence. We always want to be in the here and now. I am right here, right now, experiencing whatever it is that we want to experience. But if we don't feel it to be true, it it will never ever happen. We have to feel it. So when we think it and then we embody the feeling and then we hold that space and then we start taking the action steps that are going to align us with that, remembering that those action steps for the most part are going to be out of our comfort zone, right? They're going to stretch us, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, but the more we do it, the more we get comfortable, the more we get confident, the more we recognize our power and what's happening.
Yeah, so giant builders, I would really recommend just rewind this podcast and listen to it a couple more times, take some notes of the spiritual laws, and then if you still have questions, give Stacey a call because her information will be below. So, well, Stacey, any closing thoughts?
No, I just encourage everyone. There's a lot of this information. Actually, I will say that there's a lot of this information on my website, including these 12 laws. You will find them back in the summer. It was a summer series, summer of 2025. So each law, I have a blog and I have a guided meditation um, on my website. So if you want to go deeper into any of these laws, you can go back onto my website. You can pull up the law or the laws that you're curious about, and it goes into a lot more detail and how it applies into our life. And then there's practices, and then there's meditations. So that's at staceypage.com.
All right, we will definitely have that link. All right. So yeah, that would be really great to go back through them and actually find the meditation that goes with that too. So,
Yeah, and the practices, it's a big help because this is absolutely a lot. But you can go back and take it in digestible steps.
oh great. All right, giant builders, look for those links and visit Stacy's page. So, well, thank you, Stacy. That was a lot of information and it just really, really made me feel very insightful inside as far as just knowing that those laws are available, that those laws are out there and that we just need to like grasp hold of them and understand them.
Yeah, and then that really will help to guide and shift any changes that you want to make in your life.
So, all right. Well, giant builders, we'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.